This is what the website looked like for this program. And part of it was just the information architecture that the school dictated. We're one of many programs, but I looked at this from a information processing perspective and customer journey, and I thought it was really confusing. So you could download a brochure, which is a PDF file. You could apply online. You could download a brochure by clicking on this. You could download a brochure here, apply online. There's too many action items. There's too many replicated points of navigation. And if you went to apply online, it really brought you up to this form that SMEI had, and you had to create an account. And I was just like, fuck, why are you creating barriers? Just like, and then it was like you have to put in a $500 deposit. And I kind of equated it as like trying to ask someone to sleep with you on the first date. It's like way too much of a commitment up front. Like, why don't we slow it down and date for a little bit here? So my whole thought is, if you're selling a 3-year education program, the biggest cost to the person are huge opportunity costs of time, because you're going to lose your Monday nights for 3 weeks, and you've got a lot of effort in terms of the coursework, and you're looking at neighborhood of $3,500, $4,000 a year. So you're talking about a huge 3-year commitment in terms of time and money, and you expect someone to basically just read a website and then apply to this program? That's insane. Why aren't we like walking them through? And I thought, when I looked at the Google Analytics, which had never been looked at before, our bounce rate was really high, the information on the page was really overwhelming. I was just like, this is horrible. So my first attempts to change this were like, well, we can't change the architecture. There's a web architecture here, and we're just not going to change it for this program. And I said, you mean to tell me that you expect a potential MBA student and a BCom student and a professional student to all kind of have the same information needs? There's no way. It's going to be different by program. So I went to the dean and I said, look, I would like your permission to work with whoever I need to work with to change this, because like this is a fool's errand. There's no point in keeping this architecture. And we'd run some campaigns and we did some search engine optimization. Our traffic went way up and nothing happened with conversion. We were basically just getting the wrong type of traffic. So my first thought is, let's start doing open houses. I'll run several open houses throughout the year, and the whole purpose of the website is to not get people to apply to the program. It's just to get them to come to an open house where they can meet students and alumni, and based upon the student success stories of, this is what I asked, and I don't know if anyone in this room's done it, but have students in the program basically said, here's what I was doing at work, here's something I learned in the program, here's what I did at work to implement it, and this is the outcome I had for the organization, and this is the outcome I had for me. And they come and tell that little story. I'll get 2 or 3 students to do that. And so we basically, the lessons here is that the relationship between the medium and attracting the right customer wasn't really good. All eyeballs are not created equal. There's no point in me increasing traffic if I can't convert more of them. So who's coming from where? I can't measure incremental impact unless we turn the tool on and off. So how many of these people would return on their own without remarketing? So this is where I wanted to map the analytics, etc. What can we learn from it? So if you go to the website now, it still needs work, and I haven't done much with it in the last few years. But let's go to programs. We're hidden in here. There we go. So the first thing I did was I spent time creating a video, because people are lazy and they'll watch a video rather than reading the website. So I've been using this thing for years now. We created this program, by doing focus groups with past students and current students, we identified the main information needs early on in the customer journey. So they want to know, like, who is this thing for? Am I like those people? So we kind of outlined the cost. All this stuff used to be buried. We were like afraid to tell people what it cost. Like, put it right up front. They want to know that information within the first few minutes. And I structured the information architecture. All these tabs exist because these are the things that I knew were the kind of questions that people were asking in examining the program. So why should I do this diploma? What's the overview of the program? What are the topics and key dates? Who's going to be teaching me, etc. And everything is basically trying to get people to go to the next open house. So I run a LinkedIn campaign for the very first time in 2015. So I was targeting Metro Vancouver, English speaking. Seniority, there's these codes that LinkedIn uses to identify how senior your position is. So unbeknownst to all of us that have a LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn codes the job titles. And IC means individual contributor, which is the lowest level, all the way up to director. And so I was open to targeting various levels of seniority because I looked at who was in the program, and sometimes you had really senior people, sometimes you had really junior people. But sales or marketing was in the function code of their job, okay? I then looked at, look, I don't want to go after sales and marketing people that come from industries that have never been in the program. So if I look at where our students coming from, these are the top 10 sectors that we routinely get students from, right? Pharmaceuticals, financial, media, manufacturing, transportation. There's all these industry sector codes that exist within the LinkedIn world. I had them give me what is your full list of industry codes, how do you separate people, and then I looked through the last 4 years of my student rosters and just identified what sectors they fell into. The first time I ran a campaign, I spent $3,000, and the way LinkedIn works is you're competing with other firms to kind of like bid on sending out what's called an in-mail. And the first time we ran a campaign, the cost was 70 cents for each person that you sent out to. So with a budget of 3,000, I was able to reach 4,286 individuals. And I launched that in the summer of 2015. Okay, so I had my little script, blah, 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 blah. That's what it looked like. And so after the first week, this is the report that they gave me. So there was 28,573 people that met the target profile that I outlined up here. These targeting parameters in industry sectors. So out of the 28,000 people that I could have reached, I was able to send it to 4,286 because I was only spending $3,000. So I was able to reach 15% of my target audience. All right? And so here's where I've got really good measurability. The first thing that would happen, you're probably aware because you guys would have possibly been a target of a campaign, is that you'll get an in-mail, you'll get a message in your LinkedIn inbox. And you can either open that or ignore it. So the first kind of action item would be, okay, what percentage of the people opened it? So out of the 4,286 that it was sent to, 1,238 opened it. So my open rate was about 29%, and LinkedIn said that the average across all campaigns and education is 20%. And that's basically just based upon the fact of like what title did you give it. So we call it best practices for marketing and sales professionals. We've played with that title, and it has an impact on what percentage of people open it. Okay. So of that subpopulation of 1,238 that opened it, 197 clicked on this button that said sign up for the open house, the RSVP. Okay. So that means 197 out of the 1,238 was 15.9% open relative to a really good benchmark of 15%. So we're basically doing about average. Of that 197, 18 people signed up for the open house, which means out of the 197 that clicked on the button, they would have got to our website and be like, oh, this is not what I wanted. So it's pretty lousy, the fact that a lot of those people clicked on it and it's not what they wanted. So my RSVP rate was 9%. And so if I take my $3,000 and divide it by the 18 people that I got to sign up for the open house, my cost per RSVP is 166 bucks. Okay, that's my acquisition cost. From the 18 people that attend the open house, I could then track how many people showed up to the open house, how many people applied to the program, how many people were accepted, etc. And I track that all the way through. So the nice thing is with this program, with a 3-year revenue stream of about $12,000, right? And it's largely fixed cost because whether or not there's an extra person in the class doesn't really affect our cost structure. You can see that we can actually absorb a really high cost per acquisition because the revenue stream is very high. Now that was the results after 1 week. If we looked a month later, because the program's kind of running over time, we ended up with a open rate that was twice above the benchmark. We had 24 people sign up for the open house, and so our cost per RSVP actually ended up with about $125. I'd have to go back to my tracking system to figure out how many of those 24 people actually signed up for the program, but I know it to the number. Okay? And what I'm doing is every time I run a campaign, I'm changing the script a little bit, and I've slowly gotten it a little bit better, and now I'm essentially just kind of replicating, what works. Now, some key takeaways. Some of this is kind of sad, positive, because I'm just be measuring, right? Like, it might be ugly, might be good. Let's look at it. So the overall open rate was double the benchmark. Click-through rate at 50% was at the benchmark. Those in a sales function drove the majority of the total clicks, followed by those in marketing. Note that members fall into more than one category, so it adds up more than 100. Employees of large businesses were more likely to engage, so I know that for the future, and so I can start using that as a targeting parameter if I want to. Those with seniority or seniority of entry or senior were highly engaged. Now, this was what was sad about it. The open house RSVP page that is run on our website is not optimized for mobile phones. So anyone that got the in-mail on their phone, clicked on it, and went to sign up for the program may have had glitches in actually trying to RSVP, which means I have what's called a leaky bucket, because I'm spending money to drive people to sign up for the program, and anyone on a mobile device is going to have trouble. So if we assume that we converted 0% of mobile click-through, which we don't know is true, but it's just an example of an assumption. And they told us, LinkedIn told us that 60% of LinkedIn users are desktop users and 40% are mobile. With that assumption assume that nothing came from mobile, we can estimate that the lucky bucket we failed to capture from mobile is about 16 RSVPs. Because we got 18 RSVPs, and if 60% of the people are on desktop, that means that we could have had 40 RSVPs. But anyone that was on mobile, nothing would have happened. And so I went to the school and be like, dude, we gotta get our site optimized to mobile. Like, oh, we're gonna do that in 2 years. And that was outside of my control. So for like years, I was like, had this massive leaky bucket where I'm spending money, and if they're on mobile, nothing's happening. So that's been fixed since. But that was like the first campaign that I ran, and I'm looking at those metrics every year, and when I change a script, I look at, like, 2 things have changed. I changed the script, and then 2016 is different from 2015, but at least we have a benchmark. And kind of slowly looking at it over and over and over again. And so I've essentially stopped running newspaper advertising, because when people go away on vacation in the summertime and we're trying to finish recruiting the class, it's always a big concern, like, well, they're not reading the newspaper, but everyone's on their phone. And when we look at the stuff that we could measure with the newspaper, it was just like, you know what, the return's just not there. We're spending a lot of money. So we've actually been able to reduce total marketing spend, increase the size of it. We still have an attrition problem, as you guys can see, which we track every year, and it kind of is like just random stuff. People change jobs, people have kids, people get divorced, things happen. But your class was probably 30, 32 to start?
No, it was in the 20s.
27, 28?
No, I think it was the same.
I'll go back, I can find out. But we're getting between, well, the first class in doing this was 40, and then it's kind of bumped between 27 and 35 in the last bunch of years. And as you know, we have attrition from year 1 to year 2, and then from 2 to 3 it tends to be pretty stable. Because people are past the hump and they will finish. Right? But we follow up with everybody every summer and be like, we know that you took a year off, and you need to come back, or what's the deal? We're not trying to, only if there's value there for you, but there is attrition. But you guys are, life takes over, right? Real world, for mid-career, a lot going on. So that's an example how you got to like high quantifiability. Different media give you different specificity of measurement. Questions? Does that help?
How many of us were in your open house?
How many of us were?
How many people in this class came from an open house?
I'll have to look, but I've got everyone's number. I've got everyone's. So the nice thing too about, so hands up in here.
Oh, wow.
Open lips. Yeah. And what's nice about if you RSVP is maybe you didn't show up to the open house, but I've got your email address. And I don't want to help people, but I will do once a year a follow-up, and I'll go back 3 years. like, hi, sorry to reach out of the blue, my name's Tim Silk. You did RSVP a few years ago for an open house. I don't know if you're still interested, but we're running another one. And that, to me, that's like, that subpopulation, like, this is a population of people that already took the time to at least want to come at some level to the open house and didn't show up. They're further possibly in the decision making than just some random person out there. So to remarket to them just makes sense without it being a little bit too much.
You do an open house where people come. Is there a reason you don't do one like online? Because I've seen some programs when I search
Yeah,
for it.
webinars.
Yeah, a lot
So
of them do.
my experience with webinars is that for the MBA program, we do them because people are from all over the world, and they're immensely effortful to set up. And what I've seen and measured is it's extremely poor conversion. So I just rather, and plus, here's my thought process, and I haven't tested it, but if you're not able to come out for an open house and make that time commitment, there's no way you're going to fulfill the effortful side of the program. Like, you got to show up to class. You can only miss 3 out of 10 weeks. It's kind of like we just see it as that's the subpopulation that we're, even if we were to convert them, probably not a good fit for the program. I'm assuming that I had a phone call with most of you at some point, you know, when we were moving toward the start of the program where I vet, right? Because we get tons of applications from India and Iran online, and a lot of them, and there's a lot of people that are using education as a way of getting permanent residence or citizenship. And so we get tons of that, and we just have the standard response that Bonnie sends, like, no, you got to be a resident of the Lower Mainland. This is not a distance program. One thing which maybe not clear, that it's not correspondence. You got to physically show up. They're not taking the time to read that and to reply. It kind of tells you the depth to which they're looking for information. Yeah. So I haven't done much since then because it's like one of multiple programs I run, and it's, since having 2 kids, it's been tough to kind of have a renewal on that. But we had a pretty good set of experiments for 3 or 4 years before my kids were born, and we figured all that shit out. Now it kind of lends itself. So one thing we did last year for the very first time was we had a November open house. And we got 4 or 5 people in the program really early, and they ended up actually attending and showing up. And it's astounding how, like, running something in August, we're like, oh, this is like desperate, but let's see it. Yet our conversion in August is the highest of all the open houses. The one that we run at the end of April, early May, has always been the main one. But the one that I was like, I find it interesting, like someone would make that commitment so late in the game, but yet they do. So there you go, my hypothesis is wrong. The year that the Canucks were in the Stanley Cup was brutal. Because we had this open house planned for months, and then it happened on a night of a playoff game, and it was raining, and like nobody showed up. It was really bad. But you don't know if they're going to make the playoffs or not. They got to commit to booking the space and doing the promotion before you know if the Canucks are. This year is looking. They might squeak in. They might squeak in. Okay. So I just try to not to be too over transparent about this program, but it's like one example I can give you recently where they're marketing and I have some data. All right. So the other thing I'll show you is the work. So Tamor is this building products company. They make bath and door hardware. So they work in what's called the MFR, which is multifamily residential market. So if someone's building a condo tower and there's multiple residential units in a condo tower, you have multiple stakeholders. So here's B2B. And for those of you that are in really complex B2B markets, I use this example because it's really complex and it probably matches or exceeds the complexity in the market. Okay, so kind of showing you the stakeholders are. So let's say you're going to build a big building. You'll have the what's called the project owner, and that is essentially the building developer. So you may have heard of a company called Ani. They are a big real estate developer. They will buy land and they will basically fund it.